Our broadcast. Good afternoon. Welcome to Starfleet 4. Hopefully that made it into the intro. We're here for a casual and informal discussion on Star Trek Discovery. I'm running what is it? Running dark today because I have a flu-like thing. It's like a diminished version of the flu, and I've chosen to only be disembodied. And so we're here to talk about Star Trek Discovery's final episode of the season called "Will You Take My Hand?" And I'm joined today by Nick. Hello.
Hello.
And Rob. Hello.
Hello.
This feels like a more subdued Starfleet boy, guys. Sorry. we have Sean.
Hey.
And Gary.
Hey.
Nice. I like your avatar.
I should switch like for that one.
All right, so because I have a sore throat, we're going to hand off the episode summary to everyone else. But Sean, why don't you, as you so graciously volunteered, start it off?
Okay, so episode 15 picks up pretty much moments after episode 14 ends. Philippa Georgiou, or Emperor Georgiou from the dreaded Mirror Universe, is now in control of the ship. She's captain of the ship, and she's been placed there by the Federation itself, or whatever's left of it, the terrible admirals that are left of it. And she's been given the mission to go to Kronos. And so officially the mission is to spore jump into a cave of Kronos. And I don't even know what the official mission is.
It was to map out.
It was just to map it out.
Yeah. That was like the cover story.
It was essentially like the beginning of a plan. Was the official mission, but the actual mission was to use the device that is actually not a drone, but is a bomb, to detonate like an underground volcano, blow up Kronos, and win the war. So Emperor Georgiou picks an away team composed of Burnham, Tyler, and Tilly, and they go to an Orion kind of outpost or an Orion enclave of some sorts on Kronos.
It's disguised as a embassy, but it's really a sex garden.
Well, I think there's an official embassy somewhere in there. It's just that it's full of lowlives where they end up.
Yeah, the embassy is in the strip club. That's where
It's
it's very Orion of them.
Right.
And so they end up there because one of the entry points to the volcano is at that place. The other ones are like in like the Klingon High Council chambers, and so you don't want to go there. And so essentially, it's pretty straightforward from there. Everyone thinks they're on a kind of peaceful mapping mission, but Emperor Georgiou knows that she wants to blow the whole place up. Burnham figures it out. They have this conversation with kind of Saru on the surface, and then Saru talks to the admirals, and there's this whole I suppose moving speech about what Starfleet ideals are and essentially what Star Trek is about. And they tell the admirals that they've been doing a bad job, and they convince them otherwise by standing up. And so they develop a secret plan, which is to hand over the bomb to L'Rell's control, let Georgiou leave. L'Rell is now in control of the bomb, thus the Empire. Right. She calls off the attack in exchange for this kind of power. And
Burnham, the Klingon Armada, which is only 4 ships, turns away.
Which is 4 ships and a half, because there's like a small warbird in there, or bird of prey. They've been making mistakes, I think. But yeah, no. So she calls off the Armada, and Burnham and crew essentially go home. Tyler stays behind with L'Rell. Lorel has this speech where she decides to take over the Empire, and she explains that she's now leading it. And we finish with I see Kit Wolski's face.
Sorry.
Anyway,
I'm
and
fine.
and we
I'm
and we
listening.
finish
I'm listening.
we finish with a very old school kind of military movie vibe speech where everyone on the Discovery is decorated by the, I would imagine, I hope not the highest ranking admiral left, Cornwell, which is only like a vice admiral.
Wow, that was like deep subspace interference there.
Did you not hear me there?
Yeah, like the last sentence probably, if you could repeat.
Okay, so Burnham's decorated by everyone
right.
on the Discovery are decorated by Vice Admiral Cornwell, and we then learn we get a couple final scenes as if we're finishing The Hobbit, where Cornwell is Burnham is pardoned officially by the President of the United Federation of Planets. Sarek and Amanda have a little chat with her about I don't know what.
She's gonna stay in Paris and shop while Sarek goes back to Vulcan with
that's right.
Sarek to pick up the new captain of the Discovery.
And that's where the big I mean the most interesting thing of the episode happens. We're off to Vulcan to find a new captain.
Someone get the model. Someone get their model. Gary, you can get your model.
I only have the refit, so
it doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't matter. There we go.
We're off.
That one's way off. Get that out of here.
Okay, so let's try it with the refit, and we're off to see. We're off to see the wizard, which is like I'm assuming a Vulcan captain, and the Enterprise kind of original series comes in.
Very nice.
And Captain Christopher Pike.
Voila.
There it is.
There he is. There it is. Sorry. And so Captain
the Yorktown. Sorry.
Captain Pike. Captain Pike sends out a distress signal and comes to meet them.
And Bob's uncle.
And roll end credits with original series soundtrack.
What does it mean, guys? What does it mean?
It means, why was the Enterprise so close to the Earth, but not like trying to stop the Klingon fleet? That's what I want to know.
I mean, that's because I would say that we can give them like. It's fair to say that the show is about the Discovery, and so if we don't see, even though we know the Enterprise is doing heroic stuff, like very heroic stuff out there, they're like, whatever we see Discovery do, the Enterprise is doing like 10 times better.
Oh yeah, of course.
Out there, like
trekking.
We just have to assume it. But I feel like now the show's gonna hand off to Pike. And season 2 is going to be on the Enterprise. No, I don't
think so.
Such a wishful.
Okay, so just very, very quickly, I'm assuming they're only going to spend a couple episodes.
Probably 4. I'm betting 4.
and then we'll move on. It's been said officially that the reason why the Enterprise is there is because they want to answer questions that fans have been asking, which apparently has nothing to do with the Klingons. We've been asking questions about why Spock never mentioned Burnham. I thought that was pretty clear. But apparently that's the question we need answers to, so they'll be dealing with that.
And something about spirituality versus science, I think.
Yeah, that too. Okay, so my kind of sentiment on this episode is pretty clear, I think. Do you want to just go around like the room and see how everyone feels about the episode before we start?
Should we just start with ratings and then like dive into like?
Oh my god!
You guys want to
start to the end?
Do you guys want to just start with the episode rating?
No, because the ratings tend to change. The ratings tend to change sometimes depending on how our discussions go.
That's right. Bring everybody's rating down. That's my goal. Wherever you think you are, you're dropping.
You're dropping down.
God damn.
To conserve since my voice is rather nicely ice creamed at the moment, I'll just say my quick piece on what I thought of the episode. I was disappointed with a lot of things, And I would say that it's like far from being one of my favorite episodes, but it did have some of my favorite moments in the entire series. So I can give it that much, but I can't say that like the episode made a lot of sense. Like one thing that stood out to me is like they could have really made this episode an hour and a half, or I feel like it was just everything was just kind of tied up into a nice pretty bow, and so they sacrificed, I think, some really important details in trying to make sure that they like close the season at the, you know, like at a certain like point or whatever. So that being said, I would say that like the strongest things like within like what took me out of the moment watching it the most was the fact that the Klingon armada was like, you know, 4 ships, and like it seemed to take like a day and a half to get from the Oort belt to Earth. And like, you know, what were they doing? Just having a drinking cruise as they're like you know, cheerfully gallivanting to Earth to like destroy it. You know, like it feels like the danger wasn't as real as it could have been. And I don't know what's so hard about replicating a ship like 17 times and showing like a larger attack force. So that was like one of the main things that kind of took me out of the moment. And then the other thing was definitely like, again, the danger of Kronos was not real, because if this is in the Prime universe, we know Kronos survives into, you know, the rest of Star Trek until Praxis blows up. And then I think it's still around in some the JJ verse Kelvin timeline has this cool like where Praxis looks like it's perpetually crashing into Kronos, which, you know, that's a neat way to depict post Praxis Klingon homeworld. But anyways, my point is it survives, so there was never a danger. Like I didn't think the show would actually destroy Kronos, so that was like, okay, well, you know, couldn't you have done something more dangerous? The danger was not real is my biggest critique of the episode. And so yeah, and then that being said, like in typical in my continued experience with Discovery, like they'll do these moments that like play to my sentiment, like the Enterprise, of course, and now I'm curious, of course, and now I have to watch season 2 and, you know, go go for I have to. I can't not watch it. But I wish that since it's gonna take a year, I hope they can make some like smart decisions internally and like shuffle around some you know, ideas that are more in line with what you know, should be happening with a cutting edge TV show that's supposed to challenge your you know, ideas and push things forward.
Okay.
I'm going last. So.
Rob, tell us what you think.
I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. And we're not doing ratings, right?
Not yet.
It was proposed, but we're
down,
gonna wait till the
now. Let's see if it changes. Yeah, I really liked it. I liked how hopeful it was. You know, the almost like the triumph of Starfleet ideals over cynicism and fear, and that Burnham gave, particularly at the end, and the one where she's debating with, or she's arguing with Admiral Cornwell, and the crew kind of, you know, will get behind her and, you know, say, you know, we're Starfleet. I liked Tilly was brilliant in this episode. I loved her comedy moments, as always. I liked L'Rell, the fact that L'Rell gets power. I think that was kind of cool. There were some downsides to it. I would have liked to have seen Saru be the captain. I mean, I know he's acting captain, but it would have been cool to see him as captain. I thought it was a bit unfair that he didn't get a promotion. And that, you know, there wasn't a major conflict in stopping Giorgio detonate the hydro bomb. It kind of just said hand it over, and she kind of just said yes. But yeah, on the whole, I really enjoyed it, and I loved all the TOS references. And not that I've seen that much of TOS, but I really liked the, you know, the fact we see the Enterprise, the theme tune. What's the guy's name? I haven't even seen the episode, but I know that
Balak.
Yes. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, I really liked it. Good.
Baylock played by Ron Howard's little brother Clint Howard, which is pretty cool.
So Gary,
Why me? I always go like last.
Because Nick already said he was going to go
Nick's
last.
going last.
Nick called last.
I did.
You know that
Shotgun
tradition,
last.
like calling shotgun?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
And I don't
Oh,
know. I
come
don't know
on.
how.
But
I don't-
anyway,
I don't know, because we're Americans and everyone here had a shotgun back in the day. We
I
say
only have a Sony screwdriver that doesn't work. Um, I only have one thing to say. That was when Sohail, when you said the four Klingon ship. You remember, all of you remember First Contact. There was only one Borg ship against the whole armada, and they said there wasn't a point to destroy Earth. It was just kind of show we are still there. They didn't want to destroy Earth. They just wanted to wound the Federation. And I think in this case they didn't want to destroy Earth either. Just make like with the Jem'Hadar in DS9, they did the same thing. So I don't think their main purpose was destroying Earth. It was just make a damage that they never gonna forget, I think. So in that sense, I think that's acceptable. Having like 4 or 5 ships against one planet.
Well, I think that like what I perceived was that Admiral Cornwall and Sarek only chose to embark in an agreement with Emperor Giorgio because they were so desperate, because they were afraid that Earth was going to be annihilated. The Federation itself was going to be annihilated by the Klingons, and I think they even say it to that effect within the episode, where they're like, we're facing these like death scenarios. And Burnham's argument is great. Like, that's one of the things that's the strongest part of the episode, is that like, here's this one character who like originally there's a ton of like stuff that like she kind of goes through, and she starts out as the shoot first kind of person, and now here she is saying that like, actually it's our humanity that's going to save us, or like our ideals rather, and she, and again, like, all of that's great, and like, it's a compelling argument, but like, I definitely felt like they were in the dialogue, there was like more danger, but in the execution of the visual effects didn't match up to like what the story was saying, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would actually agree with Gary. I think that they didn't really. I know we want to get to everybody's opinions real quick, but just to back up that point, I think that the dialogue and the plan that they made to blow up Kronos was a strategic level problem. And then when you look at the force the Klingons sent off to Earth, I think it was a tactical level approach. Because if that's the first time they're ever going to attack Earth, you're not going to want to, from a tactical standpoint, you don't send your entire force in. You're going to do a little bit of a probing attack to see what the defenses are. Because had the Earth space dock that we see under construction, we know how powerful it is because we know how it ends up in the future. But the Klingons don't know that. So if they warped in with a bunch of ships and that Earth space dock was up and running, they'd be getting the run for their money, especially since their cloaks aren't effective. So it kind of makes sense why there would be a smaller thing, but I understand why there's a disparity there between like what they were saying and what we saw on screen. But I mean, if you look at it from a commander's perspective, it would make sense that they would only send a small group first just to see what happens.
I think most of the fear that the characters have in the show and that we're supposed to have comes from the fact that the Klingons are supposedly so unpredictable at that point in time. They're not really working together. The only main goal that they have, I suppose, is destroying, or attacking Earth. But we don't really know what they're going to do, what they're going to try, who's going to try it, and how and when, etc. And I think that's mainly the fear. It's not so much like the amount of ships, but so much as like we really don't know what they're going to do next.
True. And another way to look at that is, even if you disregard the difference between the strategic and tactical level stuff, even if that was the whole fleet, 5 ships, it was the paranoia that the Starfleet command was in, that they thought that, the Federation was going to die, that they were going to be extinct. And that could have been because of the suicide bombings that they had done with the Klingons, where they cloaked ships and flew them right into star bases and detonated them, and that level of fear and paranoia could have caused them to turn to, the Emperor and that bad plan, even though they may not have actually been on the brink of destruction like they so thought.
This is something that I just came to my mind listening to all of you, like the paranoia and making everything sounds much worse than in reality. It's kind of, if Star Trek really the one that translates to what's happening today in the globe, so that was basically fake news in Star Trek level.
Well, I mean, I would say that if their intention was to do a connection to modern commentary on potentially, the kind of media and hysteria that you receive from media, which is that the world is on fire and we're all on the brink of death, which isn't the case. But if you watch enough news, that's what you believe, and that paranoia can feed fear and cause people to act differently. And maybe that's what they were intending on getting.
And a couple of scenes later, Amanda just went to Paris, and I was like, let's do some shopping there,
Right.
Well, I mean, but
everybody seemed fine.
Well, I'm just gone.
Right.
I guess though that could be realistic in some senses, because life does move on rather quickly from like these kind of terrorist events that we see happening constantly around the globe, and it's almost, maybe it is a comment there on how we're all getting used to this. Like we don't really like, we don't really like mourn. We don't have the kind of society that allows you to mourn these kinds of things for like others, and
especially ground level. Just take, for example, all of the Orions and Klingons that we saw on the planet. They're clearly aware that there's like a war going on between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. Like there's even a Klingon that says, you're spying for the Federation. But then other than that, they're just going on with their lives. And so I think that all of the big scale, the huge scope of things that we see as the audience, they probably don't. They just live their own lives and they don't realize any of that.
Fair enough.
I mean, they actually, and now that we're talking about this, God,
yeah, you kind of have to give your.
I can't believe I'm going to give a positive to this episode. I hate all of you for making this. But they actually, they kind of ham-fist that argument that you just said, Sean, which is, as soon as they land on the planet, Georgiou says something to the effect of, look at these savages, and they're, this isn't a place full of people. They're not living. They're savages, living in caves. And then at the end of the episode, Michael Burnham is talking to Ash, and she says something to the effect of, these people are living. They're living their lives the way they know best, and they're just here. And that could easily be taken. I don't know if the writers intended on this, but it's possible when you consider all of the heavy terrorist paranoia and war conflict and misunderstanding subplots, you can easily connect that back to coalition forces entering into the Middle East and seeing the way that certain people are living there and saying, well, they're just living in mud huts and they're just a bunch of goat farmers and it's just a bunch of third world country stuff. But it's, it's dismissive. That attitude is dismissive, right, the way people are living there. And that kind of connects like that. I don't know if that was their intention to do that, but if it was,
it looks like
pretty smart.
Looks
it's
like
pretty smart if that was their intention.
It's gonna give it a 0.2 uptick on the final rate.
0.03. Let's get ahead of ourselves here.
That's a very cool discussion to start out with, though.
yeah. So, Sean, let's hear your thoughts.
Okay, so essentially, my okay, I didn't like the episode. I think it was a letdown. I think the episode was bad in itself, but it was also disappointing because I've come to expect more from Discovery. Discovery has a lot of strong points and a lot of faults, and I think they doubled down on all the faults in this episode in particular. And mostly because of like the scale, the sheer scope of the things that are happening. There's like an entire war going on, and then like everything is so simplified and dumbed down. We don't see a huge armada, as you said. I mean, we're kind of explaining that, but we don't see a huge armada. All of the conflicts are resolved in the easiest, most cheesiest of ways. Why would you even let the Emperor of the Terran Empire just walk away in your universe?
But that does sound like a very like
And
Federation type thing to do, you know, like
this is where I tie into everyone that's been talking about how Starfleet and how Federation all this was. Somehow Discovery doesn't feel Starfleet and doesn't feel Federation. It feels like it's emulating Starfleet or the Federation, or trying to like the same way their Klingons aren't honorable, but they keep on using the word honor. It's kind of like, hey, we know that they're supposed to be honorable, but it's not because you say it that you're actually making them that way. And I feel like it's the same thing with Starfleet. Since episode 1, that very first scene on that planet where they talk about the Prime Directive, they keep on saying things like that we're used to seeing in the other Star Trek shows, but that aren't actually happening here.
But I think it's the whole honor thing. Like for me, it was resolved in was it this episode or the previous episode? I can't remember. It's all blending together in my feverishness here. But I think it was resolved when Laurel and Cornwell had that conversation, you know, where she's like, Cornwell just basically calls her out and says, like, you say you're honorable, but you guys are completely acting, you know, this is paraphrasing, of course, but you're completely acting in a contrary way. And she says, what do you think this is? This is war. There's no, what do you, like, we're not, the way Klingons see war, it kind of does fit with that kind of mentality of like, the only honor is among the Klingons. Like, they don't have, like, to their enemies are just like, you know, bantha poodoo, you know, like it's sorry, wrong French. But so she's like it's never gonna stop. You have to do something that's gonna like shock us to the point where we're like, oh, it's basically the answer in the Vulcan hello, but on a much larger scale. She's like saying your Federation values will not stop this threat from occurring. You're gonna have to, and that's what I think kind of ties into what you guys were saying earlier about the paranoia and stuff like that, because Laurel is telling the truth, but it can also mess with your head. If you don't think there's any way to stop your enemy other than annihilating them completely, that's what you're going to do.
But that's not how you're supposed to I mean,
no, you're not supposed to.
Okay, so someone on YouTube told me that like I'm generalizing Klingons and saying that they're all honorable. Fine. Okay, I get the picture. We're not supposed, like, not everyone on the same planet will be the same way and have the same ideals and like kind of live up to the same standards. But
like the sisters.
The way I've been perceiving the Klingons throughout the whole of Discovery is like a bunch of misfits, just backstabbing and attacking and being devious and blowing things up and being kamikazes and they don't. That's not how I've seen or felt the Klingons have ever been. They've always been honorable people that will go into battle, and even if it is war, they will fight because they want to fight. And to go to Sto-vo-kor, you want to fight a fight against a warrior. You don't want to murder a child on a space station by blowing yourself up. Anyway, so I don't agree with the Klingons. That's one thing. But I don't agree with this episode either.
That's definitely what the Klingons are like in TOS, but they're a part of the Federation at this point. So I wonder if we can't forgive Discovery in a sense.
Part of the Federation.
Well, you know, after Star Trek 6, they're not really part of the Federation, but there's like a coalition or a truce and a working relationship between the Klingons and the Federation. Like they have like ship exchanges, they have like, you know, personnel exchanges, they work together on joint missions, like the Klingons regularly, like, you know, Worf is kind of like the first,
like allies, but nothing more.
By Deep Space Nine, like you see a lot more Klingons interacting with the Federation on the like such as on the station. You know,
it's more tolerance of each other and just an acceptance that the others are there and that they can't really win.
But it's still a better relationship than they had in the TOS.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Let's shift focus back to where we are.
Yeah. Okay. So Nick,
Discovery.
What did you think?
So, God, this episode was the worst. I think that it potentially single-handedly just sunk the entire show of Discovery from my perspective. For me as a fan, the more I think about it, the more I dislike it. and it was very painful for me to get through. I don't know if you guys watched my review on it, but there was a few things that I liked, but it was very, very painful for me to get through. I thought the dialogue sequences were very rough. I thought Ash Tyler now suddenly being able to just access Vok memories like this and play, I don't know, Floor Dom Jot or whatever that was. And, and he's like, I think I'm good at this. And, I was just, oh God, like now suddenly he's got the ability to recall these memories on the fly. That was annoying. The constant shifting of Emperor Giorgio's temperament was frustrating. The whole thing that ended with Laurel, like, here's this big bomb, and you can use this to hold the Klingon Empire hostage so that you can take control. Good luck with that. That's not going to work. The whole thing with the spore drive just getting completely swept under the rug. Like, we had this whole sequence in the previous episode where they grew a whole planet of spores, and they're like, yeah, the spore drive, they got rid of it because of the whatever. They don't want to use it because it doesn't have a mechanical interface to it. We'll have to figure it out later. Don't worry. And then you just have, it's little things like, then they were flying from Earth to Vulcan, and they get an emergency distress call from the Enterprise. What is it even doing in the Sirius sector? Why does it have an emergency distress call? The distance between Earth and Vulcan at warp 5 is like a couple of minutes. I don't even understand how they even. That just, like, little things like that, like, really bother me because it takes me out of the show. And it's like, why are they having an emergency there? Why are they going to pick up a captain from Vulcan? Is it a Vulcan? The fact that Saru got passed over for promotion just irked the shit out of me. We can't have an alien as captain. I mean, I don't know, just everything. I don't know.
Vulcan
guy
counts.
right. That's true. That is true. But a guy commented on one of my the video that I did, that kind of put it into a really good perspective for me, which is that, when you go to make a lasagna and you have all the ingredients and you put it together and you make it, but when you go to eat it, it just doesn't taste right. It's just not. There's just something missing, and you're not quite sure what it is. And that's how I felt about this episode. All the ingredients were there.
I think they forgot the ricotta cheese. I think
they forgot the ricotta cheese.
It's so true.
And it was just not. I don't know. It just did not connect for me, and I felt like the very end of it was very rushed, and the way that they resolved the situation with Emperor Giorgio, the Spore Drive, the Klingon War, and Laurel Vok story, I thought was just poorly handled. And that's why I said in my review that I think that the show writers were really just looking to cap off all the things that they had created in this season so that we could approach season 2 with a fresh slate, and just start off essentially kind of new. We know these characters, we know what they've kind of been through, but I don't think that we're really going to be engaging anything that we dealt with in the first season. Which is, whatever, I guess. It's frustrating, but
where would you guys rank, to go on a season level, where would you guys rank this season, the season 1 of this Star Trek, or is it too soon to do this, among all the other Star Trek series?
I can do that now.
I think it's fair to compare all the first seasons. My question is, do you count the animated series
Sure
as a season 1, or is it like a season 4 of TOS?
That's a really good question. I would say you may as well count the animated series as its own standalone thing.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Agree, Mr.
So so the animated series has the best first season, hands down.
And this is your favorite, not your best. Or we could do favorites and best, because we all know that they could be two different things.
Well, I think it's both. I think it's both. But then the animated series is cheating because it has the advantage of, like, using characters that we all know and love, and everyone's already kind of established. But then so like the animated series, then the original series probably. God, Deep Space Nine's first season is terrible, isn't it?
Really? I think it's great.
I like it.
This is gonna be an interesting list. Go on.
I don't know. See, it's not the same faults. I think I would put like everything in kind of the same package. From then on, with Enterprise's first season isn't that bad compared to like
No, Enterprise's first season
it's
is
pretty
actually
good.
really probably
compared to the rest of the
rest of the show.
like season 2 and 3.
Yeah, actually, Enterprise's first season is probably more polished than even DS9, TNG, and Voyagers. And I
Okay,
think
so
that's
TAS,
you know,
TOS, ENT, then something like TNG, DS9, Voyager, Discovery, all at the same level, kind of.
yeah,
Just a big bunch of
3 and then
what the
a
hell's going
bubble
on?
of all of the rest. Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree with that 100%. That's my vote.
Fascinating.
I agree.
All right, and then what about you guys? Gary, do you have an order to give?
What?
Or Rob?
Oh, Warp Factor 5.
No, come on, Gary, pay attention. I'm just kidding.
I do pay it. Oh, gosh. I'm not even chopping vegetables. I've already done that before.
I know.
For me personally, I would say Voyager and Enterprise kind of have the best first season for me, at least. I really like DS9, TNG, TOS at the same level, so it's like runs up 1 and 2. As we said, the animated series are kind of cheating, so I would say that's what second level, and then comes Discovery for third. There you go. Quite diplomatic, wasn't it?
Okay.
What about you,
It was
Rob?
almost as anticlimactic as Star Trek Discovery.
Ooh.
Oh.
Thank you.
Shall I go?
And if you count the Human
Yes,
timeline,
yes.
again with number 3.
What?
What? No, just ignore it.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Rob.
Rob, take it away, Rob. I'm going.
I would. I think I know which is my top, and that's Discovery for me. And then the others, I would say, are really close. It's hard to distinguish. I would say probably Discovery, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, TNG, and I haven't seen the animated series, so I can't comment on that. That's my rankings.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to stick to what I think is the best, and we could do favorites another time. But for me, Deep Space Nine's first season's pretty awesome, so I'm going to give it number 1. Then TOS, then the animated series. Because TNG's first season's pretty bad. So, I can't I can't in good conscience, even though I love TNG, like I adore that show. I can't rank it higher. Go in my favorites probably. But I would say then TNG, then Voyager, then Enterprise, because I've been recently watching it and I appreciate it a lot more. And maybe this will change in the future, but Discovery is definitely last on my list as far as like the best opening season of Star Trek. It's definitely the flashiest, most production heavy. Like it's got the most money any Star Trek series has ever had. Like I would say also as far as the actors are concerned, like that's a huge plus. I enjoy every performance. I would say not every performance, but like 90% of the performances are really enjoyable. So I think that there's definitely, I'm willing to give the show, as you were willing to do earlier, Nick, a second chance. Hopefully, I don't know if you're still on that tip, but I'm definitely willing to go on to season 2 and just see what happens. I think that they can actually make a couple of course corrections that would like fix the show in my eye. The one thing that's like really hard to wrap around, I know that like there's like a lot of discussion and argument, at least on my Twitter like feed, about people that are now like saying that they can separate the visual canon from the the visual story from the actual story, but it's really hard for me to like again like hear the name D7 and not see the D7 battle cruiser. But they could fix that a number of ways. Like this could have been D7 Mark 1 and Klingon, we don't know about it, so the D7 Mark 2 is probably going to look more like what we expect and things like that. And I suspect that they are going to do some interesting things as the seasons progress on down the line. So yeah, Discovery's last, but first seasons are not always like a an end all to a show.
But just to clarify, we're not saying, even though we're ranking them from top to bottom, we're not saying that the bottom is like horrendous. It's
Right,
more
it's
like
still-
it's more like excellent to good.
I would say that
I would disagree with that.
Oh, okay.
Medium.
Right,
I would
fair
say
enough.
the scale
And
starts at the
I'll
scale
be
Keep in
starts
mind,
at
so I don't want it to seem like I'm just because I'm not at this point. It's because TNG is on my bottom list, and TNG is my favorite show, but their first season is right down there with Discovery. I mean, but again, if you compare the two, which is, in some cases fair, some cases not fair, but if you compare like those seasons, like there's some good things in TNG's season one, that we get to experience and get to be introduced to, that they kept on, that explored and expanded through the series. Just like there's some good things in Discovery season one. Like I didn't hate every episode. I didn't hate. I wouldn't say that I hated everything in every episode. There was always something in an episode that really interested me to some varying degree, and hopefully that gets fleshed out as the show continues on. It's just the season finale was just a bit of a letdown, and I don't know if that's just because they came out of the gate so strong with chapter 2 that my expectations started to rise up a little bit too much, and that could be the case. But I just want to throw this out there because I know a couple of you guys said that you were excited to see the Enterprise at the end. I rolled my eyes when I saw the Enterprise. I rolled them hard; they almost shot out of my head, because it just felt like they were just trying to just throw like I just felt like the writer sat around and said, "What's the biggest teaser we could possibly leave off that's going to bring back the Trekkies next season?"
But then
the Enterprise, we'll just wheel it out, put it into its wheelchair, and we'll wheel it out. And
you need to see the positive in this, because if they show you the Enterprise, then you get to see less of the Discovery and less of the show that you disapprove of. So,
well, I've already read the article from Alex Kurtzman that said that they're already designing. I see is that the Duras sisters?
Yes, it's the Duras sisters.
Is that me? Are they stealing the Mona Lisa? Is that what that is? But yeah, so I've already seen that interview that Alex Kurtzman did and said that they're going to redesign the interior of the Enterprise, and that they're going to bring in people. They're going to have some people canon corrected in there, and they're going to bring in some new faces into the ship. So who knows who's going to be there? And that to me is like, again, it's like I just feel like the fact that they're pulling on the Enterprise string, like, look how cool this is. Look, we got the Enterprise. Look at this. I feel like they're pulling on that just a little too early. Like the show should stand on its own merits by itself. I mean, like when you look at like TNG, DS9, and Voyager, they had a little bit of cross utilization between the three shows, especially for DS9 and Voyager at the beginning, and then ENT had a couple of guest appearances here and there. But for the most part, they stood on their own. They didn't require nostalgia of the previous shows in order to secure viewers, and that's why I feel like it just felt like a desperate move. That's why I rolled my eyes, and I was like, "This is a little desperate." That's the way I felt. Maybe I'm being too negative.
Okay, so kind of building off what you're saying and going back to our lists, just kind of to address what Rob said. The lists that we make about our first, like our favorite seasons, our favorite first seasons, come as Trekkies. And if I'm completely objective, if I were to kind of have someone that knows literally nothing about Star Trek watch a first season of a show, it probably, because I couldn't go with Enterprise, somehow that would hurt me. It would probably have to be Discovery. And then if they have issues or whatever, then I'd be able to tell them, oh, but you should go back and watch TNG or something. But I would probably have them start off with Discovery, because having someone watch the first season of like any of the others is rough, and it would probably put them off.
I don't know that that's true. I feel like a couple of friends who, before Star Trek Discovery came out, after the J.J. Abrams movies, were really gravitating towards the Next Generation era as like their first entry point into Star Trek. That being said, I agree with you that Discovery is a much more compelling look into what a realistic Star Trek world would be like. Like I think there are things about Star Trek Discovery that I think the biggest problem is the setting, like the time period. But had this show been set post TNG and just tweaked a little differently, I don't think that like there would be as much conflict about it. There would still be the critiques on the devices and tropes and like obvious kind of conventions, but I think overall this show would have been a lot more accepted and like understood, because even people who don't know like this is the thing where I think that the producers are underestimating. They're saying only true Star Trek fans are the ones that are having, like, not true Star Trek fans, that's a terrible thing to say, sorry, only old Star Trek fans is more accurate. And so only old Star Trek fans are going to have a problem with the updated visual timeline or the visual canon or whatever. That's I think the assumption that I feel they're making. But I have had friends who have never seen TOS, but it's such a part of our culture that they have said, oh, how come Discovery looks that way? It doesn't look like what Star Trek's supposed to look like of that time. They're smart enough to realize the same exact thing that we're all realizing, which is how did the two universes sort of like, how is it that 10 years later it looks less cool than 10 years before,
The producers of the show highly underestimate like the importance of coherence in the world that we live in, because just to use like the most simplest and smallest of examples, Spider-Man Homecoming came out and there was the smallest discrepancy in the timeline, whereas it's something ridiculous like all of the MCU movies, they kind of moved 1 year in the timeline because Spider-Man Homecoming came out at the same time as Civil War or whatever it was. It's just the smallest, most ridiculous, meaningless thing. So many fans got mad on the internet. And it's just a date in a Spider-Man movie. I mean, you would think, who cares? But so many people do.
Well, when you love something, you're like very passionate about, and you're like you're attached to certain things. And I think that, again, the original series is so beloved. I know it has problems, like having isolated planets that are not like planets in a federation that are isolated. Sometimes it's likely, like the Andorians totally give you that vibe of like, keep away, we want to keep Andorian, but Vulcan seems like it should be more multicultural. And I think that I kind of, that's one of the things I really liked in Star Trek Discovery, is that it kind of like flipped certain things on that, on its head, which are more realistic of like a federation of planets. If you were to take actual humans and like predict our future, and if it were to line up with Star Trek, it would be more like Discovery in many aspects than like the original series. But that's because there were social conventions in place in the 60s that restricted writers from telling a story in the way that they truly wanted to. Like futurists of the time would have predicted the total opposite of what like you see on TOS in many regards, but it was too controversial to actually depict a society or a world like that. But you get, TOS pushes the boundaries where it could, like with regards to like interracial, romances, or even just like a hint of it with the kiss, and like just the fact that there's like an earth vessel with like a multicultural crew for the time was very groundbreaking. But it wouldn't fly today. I don't think a show could like last a long time where if it stuck true to those 60s kind of like restrictions on the world.
I don't think it has to be 60s restrictions, because when you look at TNG and DS9 and even Voyager and Enterprise for that matter, it was a core group of people that worked together to face external adversarial issues. They were a team. That's what Star Trek at its core as a show. And even in the JJ movies, for all of the crap that they get, they actually got this part right, in my opinion.
To quote Vin Diesel, family.
Right. Right. Yeah, right. According to Vin Diesel, it's family. And they are a team. And that to me is why Star Trek does not resonate with core fans because they said, we're going to take that family concept and everybody operates as a team, and we're going to kind of flip it in some areas. And they've kind of written themselves out of it in a lot of situations where, you know, Vok, Ash Tyler acted a certain way because he was Klingon, and Lorca acted a certain way because he was from the mirror universe, and that's why he was acting that way. But ultimately, Star Trek is about the crew operating together harmoniously in an effort to explore and be better and engage things on an external perspective. So I don't think that would be, I don't feel like if they wrote a show like that, it would be out of touch. I feel like people would still connect to that in a lot of ways, as long as whatever the situation they were facing was fresh and relatable. I still think it would work. And they've done this in other shows, not just Star Trek. I mean, Stargate SG-1, which lasted for, I don't know, like 9 years or whatever. Same concept. We have a team of people. They deal with external issues, but they are a family and they operate well together. And that's what connects it all together. I don't think that those tropes are tired or exhausted. I think that they could have done that exact thing, but with a more updated story. But I just feel like they wanted Game of Thrones. They wanted Game of Thrones in space.
But we kind of did get like that family towards the end, like you said, once Lorca was found out and like that problem was eliminated, Saru kind of like brought it together, and like for like a short time the crew was actually acting as this like family group, and they all support Burnham at the end in this last episode when she's telling off the admiral. They all kind of stand up and say like, you know, we're standing with Burnham on this one. They refuse to.
Right, and that opener, that season opener, would be great. Star Trek Enterprise, when it's the 2100s and this is humanity's first time going into space, but this is the 2200s and they've been at this for a while, and the Federation's been around for a while, so it's still operating like that. And then just at the end, everyone wants to start acting like a family and stuff like that. It's and I really do feel like that's why it put off a lot of Trek fans, is when it initially came out. The first episode, you have the first officer nerve pinching the captain, trying to do a mutiny and attack the Klingons. What the heck am I watching? This isn't Star Trek. This is all over the place, and that is what I think immediately put a bad taste in people's mouths. And it was ultimately unnecessary because, as you just pointed out, that's where we ended up anyways at the end of the show. We ended it with a family, so why not just start there? Like, it was like there wasn't a reason for that.
Okay,
growth.
so
I think
Discovery,
Michael Burnham,
the team behind Discovery, and I'm gonna use Saru as like the prime example of this. The team behind Discovery believe in arcs and character development. That's what they believe in, and that's what they base their show on and their characters on. And they always want to show growth. That's kind of their key word. They want to show growth from one point to another. But what they don't understand is the growth we got from Data spanned over 7 seasons of a show and 4 movies, and ultimately ended in the most human thing he could have ever done. But we got that over like essentially 10 years, more even. They tried to do that with so many characters in just 1 season.
Right.
So Burnham goes from like the literally the worst person ever, and then in every episode of After Trek,
a truncated season, and it did feel that way because it's only 15 episodes. We're used to like 26 or whatever.
it is a very short season too. But on every episode of After Trek, they keep on insisting that she's redeeming herself. She's redeeming herself. No, she's not. She's just making more bad decisions and more bad decisions. And even when she ultimately makes a good decision, she still makes it on her own and doesn't work with the team. And then Saru, it's the same thing. He's still not ready to be a captain. And the only moment where we see him kind of get emotional or something, he just goes completely crazy on a planet. All of these things ultimately don't pay off because they're only working in 1 season. There's not enough time to develop them. I'm not saying the ideas that they had weren't good. I'm saying that they simply didn't leave themselves enough time to develop them. Saru should still be exactly the same character he was in episode 1, and he should gain experience based on seeing how other humans and Vulcans and other characters act, and he should grow over however many seasons. and then he can become a captain, and it would pay off, and it would be amazing. At this point, I just feel like they rushed everything, and then you can feel that with their plot lines and with their stories, and how they shut down the Mirror Universe arc so quickly, how they shut down the Spore Drive without even thinking about it twice. They shut down Tyler and Vok. They shut down the Klingon War. They just rushed everything, and I mean, I have my fingers crossed that this was because there was pressure to get the show out and to get the show, like, give the show a first season, just because someone wanted A, to like make money off it, and B, see how good it was going to work. If they put Star Trek on the air, would people watch it? Would people pay for a service to actually watch Star Trek? And then now they're going to give them more time, because they're not even announcing this for end of 2018. They're announcing this for 2019, so they're getting more time to make a second season. And as Nick said, now that we have a family, I mean, what's left of it, because there's only like 4 main characters left. They killed Kolba.
Yeah, the 4 main
he's
characters left.
supposed to come back, because Kolba's confirmed to come back. But as it stands, they've killed Kolba. They've gotten rid of Tyler. They've gotten rid of Lorca. So we have Stamets, Burnham, Tilly, and Saru. And
So
that's it.
Make no mistake, you actually brought up a good point. The reason and maybe this is just conjecture, but this is based off of my research and information that I've gathered across the internet, which is this was not the original first season of Discovery we were supposed to get. The one that Brian Fuller and his team created was something very different and was going to center around the Earth-Romulan War that was actually taking place during this time period, the Cold War that was taking place.
But what did they think? It was too many Romulans, or
honestly, I really do think that they pressured Brian Fuller. He didn't like the pressure. He didn't like the timetable, and I think that's why he departed. And he's kind of hinted as much in a very recent interview that he did with Entertainment Weekly. I don't know if you guys have read that, but he kind of hinted at that. But also, I really do think, again, CBS is a studio think tank. They sat their demographic guys in a room and they said, what's the most recognizable creatures that we can put inside of a Star Trek show to maximize our ability to advertise it? And somebody said, well, originally we were going to do Romulans. Well, don't they just look like Vulcans? Doesn't matter. We'll do Klingons, and we'll make them look weird, and we'll update them and make them look really cool, and it's going to be great.
The funny thing is that's probably a very likely scenario. I mean, and with the hand gestures and everything.
Originally,
you got Klingons, kids.
and originally they wanted 13 episodes, and you can really feel that the episode 14 and 15 weren't planned. They were tagged onto it, and like they have this huge kind of scope story going on in these 2 last episodes that they've just thrown in there. I don't know. It's okay. So Rob, you think positive things about the show. What do you have to say about it?
I was just with some positivity, Rob.
I'll be that person. I don't mind.
Gary, are you still there?
Right. Yes, I'm still.
Yay, okay. All right, just checking. You don't have to say anything. Just checking. Go on, Rob.
I mean, I'm sure. Even though you've pointed out things that perhaps you don't like, I'm sure both of you or 3 of you. I'm sure there are plenty of things. I'm sure there are some things that you liked in the episode, right? Even a few.
Well, I also.
So are we talking this episode specifically, or the show in general?
Yeah, this episode. Specifically. This episode specifically, and then the series.
This episode
that I liked, but I mentioned those in my video, but most of them were pretty short. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I liked in this episode. I liked seeing a planet and going down to the planet and seeing Orions.
The whole Orion sequence was fantastic.
That's what I like, because essentially everything that happens regarding the Klingon War and the characters that we've been following, Lorella, all that, none of that pleased me, because I felt that none of that paid off the story and etc. But I loved beaming down to a planet. I know people did complain that like we went to Kronos and all we saw was Orions. I don't care about that. That's fine.
We saw a Klingon peeing.
We did. We saw a Klingon peeing, and I'm fine with that. I find that funny. It's interesting Dax and Worf's relationship must have been intriguing. So no, I thought that was awesome. I like seeing.
Oh God,
That's a
sorry.
topic
I
we
just.
could flesh out in Drunk Space 9.
Oh,
That's
God.
like a Drunk Space
You
9
went there. You went there.
No, I like seeing. I like seing aliens on the surface, and I liked seeing the sets that they had. The sets were really great. I will say this again: all the costumes and the sets and the CG, all of that is great. Honestly, the quality, the look of the show feels awesome. It's just that the story didn't deliver. But yes, I loved seeing just a marketplace and rewatching TNG. That kind of life is lacking a lot of the times when you go down to a planet's surface. You find yourself in a dull gray building with some dude in a onesie, and he's the leader of the he's the leader of the planet, and that's it. And that's it.
For sure.
And
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I accept that simply because it was late 80s or early 90s. Fine, okay. From what I gather, essentially TNG was they made an episode a week.
Yeah, and it was also G-rated. It was like a general audience show too, whereas Discovery's already limiting. Like, I think it's TV 14, right? Is it MA 14?
Oh, it's TV mature, which is 17.
Yeah. 17. So there you go. It's already like a whole different. Yeah. Like, whereas TNG was designed to, even though they got in all the sexy innuendos somehow.
Yeah, but I mean, audience. I mean, you're right. I mean, to be honest, to answer Rob's question, which is a good way to start talking about positive things.
By forcing you to say something positive.
He's a trickster, because instead of telling us what he thinks is good, he made us say what we think.
I know. What is the mark of a good book club leader?
Are you charging us by the hour? I feel like this is a good psychoanalyst here, but anyways, yeah. So I agree. Yeah, I mean TNG. I'm sure you guys know, but TNG's that's my jam. Love TNG. But yeah, I mean, like when they went down to a planet, or even not even on a planet, when they were wearing their off-duty clothes, it was always like a drapery, and there was always, you know what I mean? Like it was always so weird, and like the sheets were always like glittered, and like they were space sheets, and it was just so, like, everything about it was just bizarre. Like the whole, and Worf's crazy bubble chair that he sat in or whatever it was. Yeah, it was really bad. It was really bad. That was something they never did good on TNG. Literally, I think maybe 2 episodes they did okay with on certain things, but most of the part it was terrible. So Discovery has consistently had really great set pieces, really great costume design, fantastic makeup. I equated the sequence at the Orion thing to the sequence in Blade Runner where Harrison Ford character goes to get Chinese food in the streets, and everything's all steamy, and there's seedy people all around, and everyone's like, it's like a little marketplace, and that's the way it felt to me, in a good way. Like it felt that way, like somebody really spent the time to create an atmosphere and make it feel real, and lived in. And even the strip club that they went into and all that stuff, where they were smoking the volcanic ash and all that stuff, like that was really cool. Like they didn't have to do that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, he's just wearing a drapery. But that's the Riker one. The Riker ones are my favorite.
Yeah, I'll pull that one up.
Where it's like, it looks like gift wrap. It's like all like shiny, like plastic. It's really bizarre. But yeah, period, point blank, that is something that Discovery has done consistently well throughout the entire show. Their production value, value has been fantastic, and I really love the shot where they zoomed into Earth and we got to see Paris. Paris, like that was great. Like I loved it. I thought it was really well done. I love the way the medals looked. Yeah, there it is. That's exactly what I was talking about. That's pants.
His shirt is cupping his crotch.
It is. Why is that? She's almost laughing at it. That's
He is. You could tell Marina Sirtis was probably just having a jolly old time there.
They
with this.
said, Jonathan, wear this. Just get out there and act serious. Get out there, put the Bajor earring in, even though it's not Bajor yet, and just get out and act normal. My shirt's covering my asshole. Get out there. Yeah.
I can't lift my leg. It's fine.
Yeah. Why are all these straps on my pants? Jonathan, just get out there. Shut the
Ladies and gentlemen. Those are...
Yeah. But and so Discovery has done that really well.
Hey, what are you doing? Gary, what are you doing?
Gary's watching an episode of Star Trek.
I'm probably gonna get a copyright violation because of Gary now. Thanks, Gary. No, just kidding.
But is he still here, or has he just gone off to his own thing, thinking he's not in the conversation?
I think he's just watching an episode of Star Trek. He said, "The hell."
I feel like I know that Gary. I know that Gary definitely watches clips while we talk. He's done it before, like just to kind of refresh his memory and stuff like that. So I think he forgot that his mic was on. Gary, are you there?
I'm still there. Yes.
You you interrupted Nick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean it.
I know you didn't mean it, but
I believe you. But anyways, yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I mean, so anyways, like let's ultimately though, I can complain about the frustrations about them doing a reset on the season, kind of dragging that away. But honestly, if you look at a lot of the other seasons from Star Trek, they've done that before. TNG's done a soft reset. DS9 did a little bit of a soft reset, and even certain character things, like Cisco from DS9 changes his kind of character as the shows go on. They even physically change him, like he has a hair and no goatee, and then roll around. I think it's season 3 or 4 is when he gets rid of the hair and he grows the goatee, and he almost becomes kind of a different character, and he kind of matures into that character. So I'm gonna keep watching. Bottom line is, I'm of course gonna watch season 2. I'm going to be much more mindful of it. And I do believe, the reason I brought up that situation with Brian Fuller earlier is I do believe that they took a lot of the story threads that Brian and his team came up with, fleshed out a Klingon war story. They've supplanted Romulans with Klingons. They tried to do the best that they could. They had this cool mirror universe story set up, and they just wanted to end everything that they could, get it all tied up in a neat bow, so that way they could spend the next year producing a whole nother show for us to really enjoy. And so for me, season 2, at least chapter 3, I know they're probably going to break it up again between 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is going to be the real telling piece as to whether or not this show can kind of stand on its own. Because at this point, at that point, they have establishing a season. They've worked through the hiccups. They have a year now of pre-production that they can work through. If chapter 3 comes out and it's still super lackluster and fails to deliver, I think I'll be writing off the show. Until it's all available on Netflix, and then I can just binge watch it in like 3 years.
Do you guys think that 7 seasons is still the gold standard for a successful run for Star Trek, or would you be okay if Discovery
times
did
have
5
changed.
seasons? You think that's different nowadays?
Times
right?
have completely changed. We have like 16 episodes per season or 15 episodes per season. Seasons are divided into mid-seasons. Like the way we watch television is completely different. And I don't think there is a standard anymore. It's just kind of like you do your show the way you want.
So the story could end in 3 seasons or whatever.
Absolutely. If it's good, people will watch it.
Right.
But we've already gone from like 10 years to 8 years or something away from TOS in one season already.
Don't get me started on that. I just started talking nice about Discovery.
I know. But it was a bold move to A, skip 6 months ahead in the beginning, and then B, skips 9 months ahead again. It was bold to do that when you've only got 10 years to work with, unless they plan on just moving Discovery into the original series time period, which they could, because Kirk would be out there doing his thing and we could just watch Discovery like at the same time.
And it's clear, since they've already done things like recast Sarek, of course, and they're going to recast. They're not going to use a computer-generated alternate for Spock. It's pretty clear it's going to be a new an actor.
I think they're not allowed to do that. I think that they shouldn't be allowed to recast Leonard Nimoy.
Well, just
They-
his visage, yeah.
They won't. I just read an interview with Alex Kurtzman in the TrekCore website, and they said they won't risk that because there no one will be able to get close to that performance that Leonard Nimoy or even Zachary Quinto did. Zachary Quinto had the blessing from Leonard Nimoy to do what he had to do in the JJ universe, obviously, but that's a different story. But having reprised the role, they're not gonna focus on the Enterprise. They're not gonna rename the show for Star Trek Enterprise in season 2. This is gonna be Discovery. It's gonna be around Burnham. They're gonna be flashbacks, but they're not gonna recast anything. At least at this point, that's what he said in this interview. They're not going to recast Spock.
Do you guys think that Spock was a nice brother or a very awful brother to Burnham?
I think that Sarek was a shitty dad and
Yeah.
all of his kids separated.
Yeah, I'm not sure they
Wait.
spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, Cybok turned out to be a real hero.
Yeah,
I'll tell
actually,
you
you're
what.
right. All three of his children are pretty like messed up if you think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we're approaching these
So,
iconic characters the wrong way.
I did want to say something about this episode. It is kind of like a backhanded comment, I suppose, but a lot of the storylines that were going on in season 1, I ended up not really liking. And this episode, poor old episode 15, had the nasty job of tying them all up and finishing them all. And so, yes, I'm frustrated with the episode and I didn't like it, but at least it shut everything down. And now we can start fresh. And so it's kind of like this episode has to it has the tough job of like being the conclusion of everything that I didn't really like. And so it's not really its fault. If this episode was if this episode was this episode without the speech, and then we had yet some other event, and then the speech in episode 16, then it probably would have been 16 that I disliked much more than this one.
Yeah, no, I think that as all of us here are content creators in our own way, when we do a video or we do a story or we do a group effort or whatever it is, our own bias comes through in the material.
Right.
You know, no matter what, it's going to come through in certain ways, whether you're attempting to or not. And I really do agree with you, Sean. I think that when you look at the context of this creative writing team getting handed a half-finished story and said, listen, do 15 episodes, just figure it out, finish it. I think when you consider that context, that's the way this episode kind of feels. I really do feel like they were in the room and they said, listen, we got all these really great stories we want to tell, but we have to get rid of all this craziness first because we can't have it dragging into the second season. So we have to end it. And we're just going to end it. We're just going to abruptly end it. We're going to shut it down, tie it up, be done, and move on. And we just got to, because we got all these other cool ideas that we, as true Star Trek fans, which I believe that they are, want to get to. But they were handed a half-finished product and told to just, make a masterpiece with it. So they did their best and they just ended it. And I think that unintentional bias of like, let's get this over with, kind of showed through in this episode. And I think that's kind of what felt like to me was like, let's get this over with so that we can get to the good stuff. And I think that's kind of where we're going into with chapter 3.
I think that season 1 was planned out a certain way and they had to go exactly what you said. I agree 100%. And so now season 2 is going to be their own, more of their own, their chance to maybe like make it something more original and like that. I will say that like another thing, and of course it's no different than any other Star Trek series before it, but one thing that like I've been rewatching it sick here in bed, so I plug in and just like been rewatching the show from the beginning. And what really does bother me is that like I think that the show wants to be a modern television show and do all these things, but like those little breaks, the little commercial breaks where the commercial break should be, I pay for the non-commercial version, but even you, Sean, have said like the commercials really take you out of it because it's like you're watching, you're like really into it, and then there's a commercial break on television. I wish that like now that like Star Trek, I wish it's not gonna happen because CBS is gonna want to try to make the most money they can. But I really wish they were bold enough to just say, hey, pay for this thing. Those of you that are paying the $10, we're gonna do a different cut that doesn't even have those little breaks in them, you know. And it'd be neat to see a show that like just flowed a little bit better because it does take me out of it at times. Oh look, Gary said yes.
Listen, I don't know about you guys, but I love it when Home Depot ads play back to back, and it's the same one. All right, let's get this done. Okay, make it happen.
But of course, that's not going to change. CBS executives are saying that it's a runaway success and that it's made like oodles and oodles of money. So despite its flaws, do you think that like sometimes they say that a show that is so successful does not learn from its flaws? Do you think that the creators of the show are aware that like, you know, there is even a problem with their show, or do you think that they think that like their shit don't stink and season 2 is going to be more of the same?
You're moving into a very touchy subject. Okay, so I'm gonna throw out a couple lines about that, and then I'm gonna shut up because I don't want to get into a big debate. But
don't mention anybody's names.
Yeah, let's just keep it as general as possible.
Just that there was a time where you would create content and something existed called constructive criticism. Now, there exists only two things: loving something and hating something. And hate is dismissed. And what I do is I criticize and I try to be constructive and try to essentially I want Star Trek to be the best thing it can be because I love it. And so I will try and talk about the problems that I have and try to talk about the issues that I have, and then I will praise the things that I enjoy. And all of that is to try and work to make currently Discovery the best it can be. But every time you will say anything even a teeny bit negative, it's dismissed as hate. As much by the producers of the show, the creators, as fans. And so I'm pretty convinced that at this point, everyone creating the show are just basking in the glory of everyone saying that it's amazing, and they're just going to maybe continue down the road that they've already, started going down. And I think that people need to learn nowadays that there still is something called constructive criticism, and you still need to accept when someone says something is bad, and you need to fix it, and you can't just go off and say, you don't understand. You're the one that's wrong. It's not the people that are criticizing that are necessarily the ones that are wrong. There you
go. So I would I'm only going to add a caveat to that, which is I think that what you just said, Sean, I think that's the public face that they put on. I think that behind the scenes, I think that the Trek writers, specifically that writing team, I think they're aware. I think that they are cognizant of the criticisms that if you look at Star Wars YouTubers, which is the main media that a lot of people, especially sci-fi fans, get their information from, there's a lot of Star Wars YouTubers out there. There's not a lot of Star Trek YouTubers that create content that people watch regularly, and those folks that we all know about who they are, and they criticize the show in various ways, not just praise it. And I think that it would be crazy to think that at least somebody on that creative team is subscribed and regularly watches one of those channels. I think they're aware of it. I think that they are cognizant of it. And I do think that does tie back into a lot of their problems with being handed a half-finished project, which is that their hands were a little bit tied. I would love to be able to sit down with some of the writers and actually ask them that question and really delve into that, or to see how much of the studio interferes with what they want to do.
I think that would be awesome if any of you guys reached out to a writer and got them on one of your channels. Like,
for sure,
I think that'd be really great.
We fault the writers because that's the scripts that we see come out, but we don't know exactly how much the think tank up at CBS Studios interferes and says, "Listen, that's too Star Trek-y. It needs to be more mainstream." And then they have to jerry rig the script into something that can connect with a wider audience. We have no idea. We really don't. Ultimately, none of us do. That's why I say like their public face is one of like we're gonna be maintaining a positive atmosphere, and the show is the best that there ever was, and that look how successful it is. But I do believe in my soul. I have to believe that the Trek writers and the creative team are aware of they're aware of it. Like I do believe that the guy or gal who runs the Trek Twitter account saw my tweet the other day where I was like, listen, what friggin' star date is it in this show right now? Somebody somewhere saw that, and then they said to themselves, well, geez, I don't know what the star date is, and I'm not going to respond to that because I actually don't have an answer. I do believe that they see that stuff and that they're aware of it. I do. I really do. I have to believe that. Otherwise, I've lost all faith in
Well, it's very Starfleet of you, and
But I think what one thing that resonated with me is that like this is their baby, and in many ways, like if someone critiques something that you're producing, like you're gonna try to show the best possible, like the most positive face to the public, because if you yourself seem like unsure about your own show, then it's not gonna spread confidence in that show. So that totally resonates and makes sense. But I do think that like after hearing what you said, Nick, I agree. Like I think that's true. Like yeah, like they must see, at least they must have probably one of the more complete pictures of the reception of the show than anyone else, because all that feedback is going straight to them. Like we even we see a lot of things incidentally, but like can you imagine how many people tweet at Star Trek's account like every day with some kind of like either praise or critique? It must be a lot.
So I follow that up with the fact that Star Trek actors and producers that are currently in production with the show have interactions and conversations with us on Twitter. And I'm not saying that to toot our horns and say, look how cool we are. It's to show the fact that if the actors and the producers are cognizant of the things that just us, and we're a bunch of nobodies, that are saying, that's why I say like they've got to be aware of the general consensus on this show. And I do think that that's why they're going to be doing a bit of a shift and why they did a soft reboot on the show. And we're going to see something new and fresh, hopefully for chapter 3/season 2 or whatever the heck you want to call it.
We are all Sylvia Tilly. What Star Trek Discovery character did you identify the most with, and would you hate to see killed off in season 2?
Tilly.
Tilly.
That's the easiest question to answer.
All right. What about you, Nick?
For me, I'm still hoping for Prime Lorca to come back. I love Jason Isaacs.
I know he's
my man crush. I love him. He needs to come back.
Delicious actor.
He's a fantastic actor. He just owned this season. Every single scene he was in was fantastic and phenomenal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Fucking bring him back. Holy, like, I don't care how much money, you bring him back, okay? You bring him back. That's what I want.
And Burnham's not a fair answer because we're assuming she's not going to get killed mid show run. She's going to make it to the end, so it has to be anyone but Burnham. What about you, Sean and Gary?
Gary, you want to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay. So who do I okay, so this is, I know he's already dead, but they said they confirmed he's going to come back, Culber.
I knew you were going to say Culber. I knew you were going to say
He's my favorite. He's my favorite character on the show.
He's even wearing white. Look, he's wearing white.
Yes, he looks awesome. Wilson Cruz himself said he will be coming back. So just as long as they don't kill him again.
Well,
I love the guy, and I identify with him because he's the most rational and logical and kind of straightforward character on the show. He's the one that follows the ideals of Starfleet.
From the beginning, he's been the kind of, and it is ironic that he's wearing white and he kind of stands out and all that stuff.
In a very Robb Stark Game of Thrones kind of way. Spoiler alert. It gets him killed, doesn't it? But yeah.
Gary.
Thank you, Nick. I'm not the only one that picks on Gary.
The thing is with me, I have a difficult position here because I always loved every character in every show. So I never had like a soft spot
Favorite.
for Data or Picard or Cisco or Dax or I liked all of them equally. And in Discovery, the characters are really cool. I do strongly say that the characters are really cool, and I do feel connected to every one of them. I would love to see Jason Isaacs, Lorca coming back. I would love to see Michelle Yeoh coming back even as a bad Empress. And I just would love to see everyone being alive at the end of season 2, basically. So I resonate with all of them in a level in one sense, but I want to see all of them. That's it.
I think for me, it's I'm gonna go side with Rob on Tilly. I think from Tilly for the win. Fuck yeah, Tilly! There's gotta be a Tumblr. If there isn't, someone needs to create it. But yeah, for especially in this, like, I haven't completed the rewatch, but I find myself really gravitating to her character because I really misunderstood her. But not as much as I misunderstood Saru, but still, I misunderstood her in the beginning and actually thought she was, which was, I think, intentional, a little bit annoying. And I was like, what's going on with this character? She's a little too intrusive and presumptuous. And she's like really like, getting in Burnham's face and stuff like that. And I think that,
I'm just a little disappointed. Nobody said Harry Mudd.
my Friday Instagram post today was classic Harry Mudd, wishing everyone a happy Friday. I'll try to pull up the picture. I think that like we pretty much have beaten this dead horse into the ground. Is there anything anyone else wants to say?
Hey, dead horse.
No, sorry. This very much a live horse for one of us, two of us, maybe. Into the ground. Sorry, William Shatner. We would never actually hurt horses in real life. He's an
He would
equestrian.
mess you up if
you would. If William Shatner got a hold of this as like an out of context sound clip, I would be ruined.
I just have a general question for you guys, because I don't have anybody else to generally ask these questions to.
Nice.
I know.
We're all in the same boat.
We're here.
We're all in the same boat. We only have each other when it comes to these questions.
That's right. Any theories as to who they were going to go supposedly pick up on Vulcan to be the captain?
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah.
It's a really good question.
I don't have any theories. I have none. I really don't know who it was going to be.
I think whoever it is going to be the captain for the next season. I think they're going to pull, at least for these first 2 seasons, and maybe further. I don't know if this will be the captain that permanently stays on Discovery or not, but I wouldn't mind if we had a guest I've said this like probably since the beginning of the Discovery concept, knowing that Burnham was the central character. I thought calling it Discovery was a mistake because it would have been even neater to follow Burnham on other assignments, and you get a great sense of Starfleet through her journey into captaincy or whatever. But I definitely think that I would be extremely happy with a Vulcan captain because that would be great. But I do have to give props to Saru because I did think that he was doing a pretty good job as captain in the last couple episodes.
I agree. The only theory that I had, which was this huge stretch in my mind, was but I don't even know if she would still be alive, would be DePaul. But
Oh my gosh!
I don't know if she would still be alive. I did a little bit of.
She is still alive, isn't she?
I did a little bit of research on it, and it's not conclusive whether it's not specifically stated when she dies, so it's possible she could still be alive, but she would be like ancient. I don't know if she'd be up for the captain's chair, so to speak.
She's already 90 in Enterprise.
Yeah.
An average lifespan of a Vulcan is what, around 300 years?
Yeah, I think for women, I think it's for 350 according to
350.
the.
Well, she
Starfleet
could,
medical.
doing my rough Starfleet boy math, which we all know is so accurate and so good, that would place her at like a human's like 70s, which, why not?
Yeah, just wheel her out there.
Although the actress is much younger than that, so they'd have to age her. Isn't she?
Mm.
Yes, Jolene Blaylock. I'd be fine with seeing her.
Okay. To answer your question, I honestly think that it's either one of two things. I think that they just said we're going to Vulcan to get a Vulcan captain, but the actual Star Trek Discovery team didn't really think about it. They just thought we're going to say that to have the ship go somewhere, but the objective was to have it stopped by the Enterprise, so they didn't even think about a captain. Or if they did have a captain in mind, they had something along the lines of like black male or Asian female or just a general idea of who they were going to cast, but that was it.
Yeah, I honestly, ultimately, I think that you're right. That's why I just assume at some point they're just going to name Saru captain of the Discovery. I don't even think they're going to bother to cast anybody. I legitimately do think that they were just looking for a reason to get the ship to leave Earth with Sherrick on it, so that when it's the Enterprise that shows up, him and Burnham can share like a little look, like, you know who's on that ship? Ah, and that's really it.
Fuck you, boy.
Oh, Spock boy, yeah. So we'll yeah.
What do you guys think, Gary and Rob?
Well, I guess there's it
Gary,
doesn't
could you
necessar-
turn that off? Sorry, Gary. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you. Could you mute your volume, please? Thank you. Sorry. All right, go on. Sorry, Rob.
I was going to say that it might not necessarily be Vulcan. I guess there are other species on Vulcan, right? There's other embassies and
True.
It is a bit
Maybe an
disappointing and anticlimactic to go to Vulcan to pick up a human, though.
yeah, I guess could have an Andorian captain, or
That
I
would
wonder
be
if
amazing.
maybe could something have happened on Vulcan and maybe Enterprise is bringing the captain for Discovery for some reason. I don't know.
I mean, I imagine it didn't even seem like an out of place thing. It just, I can imagine that like people travel freely between Vulcan and Earth, and like, it's like
Here I'm getting upset again because this is what bothers me. You have a situation where they've lost a third of the fleet. Earth was almost invaded. They've lost all these ships, and you're not going to promote Saru, who led them out of the mirror universe, and then they just got captains waiting around. Didn't you just lose a bunch of people? You lost like thousands of people. Don't you need captains? Why are you gonna
there definitely should have been a scene. I think
Come on.
there should have been a scene between Cornwell and Saru, and maybe a way that it could have played out where it's feasible is that Saru loses his confidence in the interview, and then she decides at the last minute, oh, he's not ready, so she's like, sorry, bro, you need another year before I can consider you for captaincy. But you're gonna love serving under Captain T'Pol because she has almost 300 years of experience.
Right. Which, I mean, I guess the other way to look at that is if it actually was T'Pol, they could make a case saying that they needed to bring her out of retirement because they needed experienced captains.
For
Yeah.
that's
But I doubt. I don't think so. It's just so. But to be fair, they did the same thing in Star Trek TNG. They did the same thing after War 359, and they lost a bazillion ships. Riker was offered a command, and he's like, "Nah, I'm just going to stay first officer of the Enterprise." Like, fool, they wouldn't give you. Like, they need people to command these ships. Like, get a grip. It just wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense. So, I know I'm criticizing both shows, but like, it's just frustrating because it blows my blood.
We've gone to being negative about TNG and DS9 now.
That's right. I'm just gonna start bringing all of them.
That's it. This is Star Trek. I hate Star Trek.
Yeah. By the end of this podcast, I'm gonna shut my channel down.
No, don't do it. Gary, who's the captain of the Discovery?
Well, right now he's Saru, isn't he?
No, but who's gonna be the captain of the Discovery?
Well, and do apologize to interrupt again with the little audio segment. I just wanted to hear what Sarek said, but he didn't mention it's gonna be a Vulcan captain. He said we have to
We're
go to
just
Vulcan
trying to
to pick up
pick
a new
pick
captain. I don't think he's gonna be a Vulcan at all. And as long as other species can be in Earth, there's a lot of other species can be in Vulcan. Why not? I mean, they have like holiday resorts or something. I guess. So
I think we're just saying we'd love to have a Vulcan captain.
I
would
don't.
be fine.
I wouldn't. I don't know. But whoever. I think it's gonna be Lorca.
God, Vulcan Lorca. Okay, so do we have anything else to say, or can we kind of move into conclusions? Or
I think conclusions is a good place to go to.
Just one more thing though.
go ahead.
On that note, Gary, for sure, Lorca's coming back. They made a point to say, "Oh, Prime Universe man would never survive in the Mirror Universe." They made a point to say that, and like they almost like Cuomo like almost turned to the camera and like winked at it when she said it. Like we get it. Jason Isaacs is coming back. We got it. We're fully aware.
And he has to come back. He was one of the highlights of the show.
For
He has
sure.
to.
He's not gonna. He's coming back, 100%. I don't know how he's coming back, but he's coming back. I don't know how
Well,
he did it.
there was something that when I think it was Star Trek Destination 3 in Birmingham, when I actually asked Conrad Trinier, who played Trippi in the Enterprise, like, did you know you were gonna die in the last episode? And he actually said, like, we never really got to the point when what? Yeah, really, I just spoiled it. Sorry. So ignore me now.
No.
So basically, he said like, okay, you never knew, and they just gave him the script and the last scenes of the episode, like, okay, you're gonna die, and he had nothing to say. But
That's
then
so
he
brutal.
But then, well, yeah, that's another story for another day. But he commented and he told me like, in reality, in sci-fi, you never dead. You never died. Even if you die, you can resurrect. I mean, Spock has been resurrected. Benjamin Sisko never died, although he died. But a lot of things can, a lot of things can happen. So I'm pretty sure Lorca is there. They never really stated how he died or what happened with him in the Mirror Universe. Maybe he's not in the Mirror Universe. I mean, the ship can swap places, but it's not necessarily the other. I mean, I don't know. A bit complicated, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always the Nexus, which
I think Lorca can still easily come back and can become the captain of Discovery. But I would love to see Saru becoming the captain of Discovery. He deserves it. He deserves it.
What if it's William Shatner as older Captain Kirk? And he comes through the Nexus.
Whoopi Goldberg.
Whenever you need William Shatner, he comes to save the day.
They just find him on Vulcan chopping wood and beautiful day, like making eggs.
You know that so well.
I do. I hate that.
That's very good.
I can really get into
beautiful day. That's very a person who's watched that film a few times.
I've seen it too many times. Many times. Sorry.
So conclusions.
Okay, so I wanted to go first and say that at the end of the day, this season and even this episode has had a lot of ups and downs. But I am ultimately happy because I've watched a new Star Trek show and I've been able to discuss a new Star Trek show. And for whatever reason, I can't explain, even if it doesn't feel quite as Star Trek as before, I'm happy. I like it. I'm happy that Star Trek is back, and I'm happy to be watching it.
Very nice. I just temporarily muted you, Gary, because Sean was echoing through your speaker system. And don't ask me how I knew it was your speaker system. I do apologize, but I couldn't. Right.
He didn't like what you were saying.
Right. Yeah. Welcome to the Mirror Universe. bitch. Boom.
All right, now I'm gonna try to unmute you. It's not letting me. Damn it! Ah! All right, go. Someone else go next while I fix Gary.
I will say that my final thoughts on the episode was a letdown. My final thoughts on the season and the show as a whole is eagerly awaiting chapter 3. I am still waiting for it to spring up and become great. And for whatever it's worth, I do still believe in the show. I still believe in Star Trek, and it was great because it brought all of us together. So the show can't be that bad. Show can't be that bad. I think it's brought a lot more to life into the franchise than the JJ movies did in the past. I think that it's expanding on our knowledge of Star Trek, even if it's shattering canon in a lot of ways. We're still getting to experience a lot of new things and explore new ideas in the show, which is ultimately what it's all about. So that's all I got.
Very nice.
Yeah, I thought I've said it already. I really liked this episode. Yeah, there were some things that could have been better, but I think I said before, I like the fact that it seemed really hopeful, that Starfleet ideals triumphed in the end. I like that the speeches that Burnham gave and how how poignant they were, especially with like what's going on in the world today. With I think she says, not allowing desperation to destroy moral authority, that kind of thing. And in terms of the season, the whole of Discovery so far, I've really enjoyed it. The characters have been great. Particularly, I've really enjoyed Tilly and Saru, their development. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the next season and where that takes us. Meeting some new characters, new storylines. Yeah, I'm really impressed. I really like it.
Excellent. Hey Gary, I can't override your mute. Can you try pressing mute on your computer? I probably pissed Gary off.
Yep,
Gary, try to press unmute on your thing. I can't. There you are. Yeah. Okay, your turn, Gary.
Oh my god.
There you are.
So what do I have to talk about now?
You just have
Orville.
to.
I'm really looking forward to season 2 of Orville. Probably comes in October 2018. So I'm really looking forward to that.
2019. It's longer than that. 2019.
So what is it?
Alright,
Is it closing thoughts? Is it?
Yeah, closing thoughts.
Okay. So I generally enjoyed the episode, and I'm looking forward to the second one, next season. That's it.
What are you doing tonight to go celebrate the fact that it's Friday and you don't have to work tomorrow, Gary?
I do have to work tomorrow, so.
Oh my god. That's brutal. Does anyone else work on a Saturday? I think Sean does, right?
Yep.
Oh man.
I do
Sorry.
pretty regularly.
Really? Oh guys, I'm so I'm the only one that gets the weekends off here, I guess. What about you, Rob?
I'll get the weekends off.
Oh, you do too? Well,
Not
we're
to
gonna
rub it in,
us
but I'm gonna-
weekenders.
I
If
intend
I
to
weren't
spend-
sick, I'd be drinking. I have to say that.
Oh,
I
go
have
on,
to say
sorry.
that. Sorry, I'm stumbling over words. I have to say that for me, the thing that resonates the most is what Sean said. Is that like for the first time in I don't know however long I've had the opportunity to talk about Star Trek and whether I like it or I love where I love it or I like it or I hate it at times. It's still Star Trek. This last episode was not the best in the season, but there were enough really good episodes this season, I think, that are just good episodes this season and some really great episodes this season that are compelling enough to let me say, oh yeah, that was a good start, Star Trek Discovery. I'm ready to see what you got in season 2. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to not even shut down my subscription, mainly because I want to rewatch the show at least a couple times, just give it a little time and space, and then see if there's I'm 100% certain there's details that I didn't catch, in that first initial viewing. So I'm excited to dive in a little more deeply into the show, and I think that like the characters that did bubble up to the surface and that have remained here at the end of the first season are compelling enough and interesting enough to take us into season 2. And at first I didn't like Michael Burnham, but I actually really like her, and I think that she's a character that I'm interested to see. Star Trek Discovery could still, could either lift her up and make it really boring, or more than likely they'll probably continue to make her face like these terrible decisions and like awful challenges. And so it'll be interesting to see what they throw at Burnham next season, now that her mutiny's been expunged from the record.
Gone.
Just like that, Spock is correct. There's never been a mutiny in Starfleet. But what are your ratings, gentlemen, for this episode?
Should we start with the highest to the lowest, or the lowest to the highest?
Oh, we don't know. How do we know?
Oh yeah,
Just this episode, yeah. Well, the
We
person
can
who gave the
guess,
summary,
surely.
the person who gave the summary always has the privilege of going last.
Aha.
So Robin and Sean, I guess you get to go last. I'll go ahead and go first. I give this episode a 6.5. I've already stated all the reasons. That's a low Starfleet Boy rating. I usually give them like 7s and 8s and stuff. So
Yeah, well, you know what? Whenever they send you your check in the mail, if you could just cut me a little bit of that.
I guarantee you, that if they had sent a check, I'd be like, this episode is a 10.7
Out of 5. That's right.
I can be bought. Yes, just the heads up there. No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah, the whole show, very cool, very amazing, impressive,
6.5.
very amazing, tremendous show.
All right, I guess you're
Okay.
next, Gary. Gary, you have to unmute
He's-
yourself
he's-
again. Sorry.
He's
Oh,
got
8.5. Gary's sending it to us via text.
8.5.
Did you
Gary,
what?
Unmute and talk about your rating.
If they're in your room right now, just send us a thumbs down emoji. It's okay if they are.
So Gary's just 8.5. Now you get to go, Nick.
We're rating this episode, right?
Yeah, just
Just
the
the episode, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's a 1.
Wow, that's the lowest as far as our discussions have gone.
That's
the
a 1
lowest.
for me.
And it would have been what, like a 0.5 had it not been for that one moment that kind of.
we definitely rounded it up. It was at a 0. when we
Oh
started,
no!
but we've rounded it up to a nice 1.
I
Maybe a
have
1.1. You know,
Oh, come on.
maybe I'll do that, a soft 1.1. But it was a tough, disappointing episode. So yeah, that's it.
Go for it, Rob.
Oh, yeah, I feel a bit out on my
That
own
hurt
here.
you. That hurt Rob. that was personal for you.
I think it's a 7.5 for me, for the reasons I've stated.
I thought you were gonna go at least 8.5 on it. So interesting. And Sean, you're the deciding factor for the final rating of the group, the council.
Okay, well, it is not the worst episode of Discovery, because I think the worst is still that planet Pavo planet episode. Literally nothing happens.
I think I went below 5 on that one. If I'm not
This episode gets points simply because for Orion Town, which looks awesome in the sets and the costumes. So I'm going for 3.5.
Wow.
There you go.
So, what do you guys think is fair? Like a 5, right down the middle?
I think that's fair.
All right.
Yeah.
So 5 on the Starfleet Boy group
Um,
cumulative review
Yeah, it's an interesting episode that so many people loved so much and so many other people disliked it so much, because this isn't just specific to our group. I've seen that a lot on the internet.
It'd be
For
neat to
sure.
see. Go ahead.
I would say that not to continue on the discussion bit, but some lines are being drawn in the sand a little bit between fans, and the end of, I think, the overarching end of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 has really divided Trekkies even further than the pilot episode did. So it's hopefully, that's why it's Chapter 3 is gonna has a lot writing on it. It's going to either make or break. It's either going to cement that line in between all of us, or it's going to erase it and bring us all back together. But it's just based off of this conversation. There's only a handful of us, and we're all so basically all over the place. It's either kind of more towards the top or more towards the bottom. So it's even dividing us. And we talk about Trek all the time, and
But the cool thing is,
yeah.
The cool thing is that look at this group of folks that have disparate views, and sometimes our opinions are wildly apart. But look how friendly and casual and informal and nice we all are to each other. So to the internet community, I kind of feel like that's the message that, at least on this show, I know Sean, you try to reiterate this too. It's there's no reason to be rude or a dick. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
That is good advice. Advice of the day.
Don't be a Klingon dick, which apparently has two
members.
Oh my god, double dick.
Yeah, double dick. Klingon double dick. Or maybe it just has two pee holes. I don't know how it works. Kind of anatomy class on it. Contact Klingon High Command. Get a science book on them.
All right, I'm gonna go back to video just to say live long and prosper, everybody. And whoa, hold on, we have to do the brightness thing. There we go. Now you can see live long and prosper, everyone. And thank you for coming to this discussion. And I hope Gary, I'm so sorry you had technical difficulties, but I'm glad you came on. And there you are. Yay. And I look forward to talking some more with you guys in the future. And I'm going to go catch up on all your videos and other content. All right.